for us, thinking long term, the finality of the resolution that was reached, it was not an easy decision. We would much prefer that everyone agreed with it, but recognizing that reasonable minds were going to disagree, reasonable minds were going to disagree, reasonable minds were going to disagree.
The stunts in this movie were performed by professionals, so for your safety and the protection of those around you, do not attempt any of the stunts.
Flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn. It's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah. Turn on your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective in the data. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice and control. Late night in Moscow, where nothing ever happens. Night glooms in the moonlight.
Fusion ride under surveillance, nowhere to hide. Influence creeps like blood on the floor. Fine line between peace and war. From campus to crypt, the script flips tragic, mystic and twisted. Magic turn manic. All crew lingers, but the echo remain. Chains of the slain and eternal pain.
And here we go.
Welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
What is going on, Hive? TGIF. Happy Friday. It's great to see you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. You got the audio coming in loud and clear. If this is your first time here, I'm your host, Birdie. I go live weeknights, 7 p.m., typically 7:30 sometimes on the weekends, being Friday night. I'll be live tomorrow sometime before noon, but this is a contrarian thinking live stream. So we think past the headlines. We question the narrative. So if you're easily rattled or if you're offended on behalf of others, you might as well get to scrolling because you're going to end up hating this. However, if you're somebody that likes to look into things, you actually like to read the footnotes, you do your own research, you are amongst friends, you have found your people, and welcome. Now, I'm very excited for tonight for a couple of reasons. One, you guys know me. I'm never afraid to not say the quiet part out loud, which I'll be getting to that in a second. But also, I have a surprise guest that's going to be joining me here in a couple of minutes. A seriously credible guest, not even a YouTuber. It's not some random person that you guys have never heard of. It's not anybody who's chasing clout. It's somebody who has worked inside the legal world, someone that can understand what's going on and can explain it to people like myself and like you if you're not familiar with the legal language. So buckle up for that. I'm very excited to talk to them. And that takes me into the theme for this evening. If you can't see what I have up on screen here, we're going to be talking about this WSU lawsuit. I just said I'm not afraid to say the quiet part out loud. Let me give you my one sentence, non-legal analysis of it. And just everybody take a breath, because I'm going to, again, say something that the majority of people are probably too scared to say. And I think that this lawsuit's bullshit. I really do. And before anybody melts down, I just want to be very crystal clear about it. And what happened to these families is horrific. It's terrible. But that's what makes this lawsuit so dangerous. This is rather a complaint. I don't know if it's going to qualify as law, hence why I have the surprise guest on this evening. It's starting to feel like this narrative has been hijacked into just emotional fiction. Like, this is getting people emotional enough to believe anything, to the point where any common sense has just gone out the window. Okay? So buckle up for tonight. I hope you guys are excited. I'm going to say what's up to everybody super quickly, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring our guest on up here. We got Jeremy, Discord Dawn, shout out to one of my mods, Carolina, Crime Spy, Hannah, THD of Thinkology, Jenna Bomb, Daily Twin Flame, long gone, UFO Dog, shout out to my mod, Love and Other Habits, Luna, shout out to my other mod. Where's Beck at? Gotta get, oh, there she is. What's going on? Durat, KJ in Boston, Liz, Lisa, UK Karen, Thumper, Not Lamey Jamie, Ashley, Aries, Sleutherdare, Gavina, Brandon, Carolina, Philly Special, K Wolf, Vegas Nat. I follow this dude on YouTube called Vegas Matt. He's like a slot player. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. Tarnish Pearl, Liz, Phoenix, Nubs Piece, Sable Me, Bemmy, Shelly. What's up, Gramilla? Genuinely confused. Star C, PW4. Think Twice. Blue-Eyed Candy, always great to see you. Let me take a sip of coffee real quick. Or chug it, for that matter. It's been a long day for your boy, but I am excited to be here. Now, if you guys have not hit that like button, please go ahead and do that. I'm going to put this full screen. That way, if you guys want to screenshot this, and then after the live, you can go into your photos on your phone and just tap the QR code. That'll bring up all of the Hive's socials. So it'll bring up my TikTok. It'll bring up our merch store. Here's a quick sneak peek of that. It'll bring up our Discord. Please join our Discord. Our Discord is awesome. It's the best. And all of my streams are free. So liking and subscribing to the channel, joining on the other platforms is really the best and easiest way to support this stream. Obviously, I want to grow this channel. You know, I want to reach more open-minded thinkers like you all and like how I think. And by liking this and subscribing, that's how you get it out into the ether. Now, I have a special guest, everybody. And I am very, very excited to have this gentleman up here. He's been on once before, amongst others, but this was a complete impromptu and random decision that we made tonight after seeing this WSU lawsuit break. So I'm very honored to have the one and only Ron Funk. How are you doing, Ron? Good to see you, brother.
I'm good. Good to see you. Good to see the Hive.
I love it, man. Well, thank you for coming on for such short notice. And
sure.
I know you've been on the stream before with Kristen and Sam, so it's good to have you back. And one of the things that you and I were discussing on the phone earlier is this WSU lawsuit. And I think I called you and I said the first words out of my mouth were, does this have any basis? And so I don't know if you want to share your initial thoughts on what you thought about when you read this, because I know you've got some notes, and I don't know if you got all the way through it, but I know you were about halfway through when we spoke. So what were your initial thoughts on it, dude?
My thoughts are, this thing is thick. I printed it out. I'm old school. And so I printed it out and I got little tabs and stuff. I also have some electronic notes. This is the biggest complaint I've ever seen.
Really?
And there's probably really good reason. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Don't get distracted by the comments. I'm just putting them up there. Everyone's hyped to see you, brother.
I love the comments. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here and be hanging out with you guys. And I'll tell you this, I found out this morning that the complaint had been filed. I think Kristen, in fact, texted me. And I found it. Well, actually, I think Kristen gave it to me. And so I printed it out and started going through it. And I was thinking of texting Kristen, say, hey, let's do an emergency live or something tonight. Turns out you guys beat me to the punch. Kristen has mom stuff to do tonight, I guess. And I was just, my wife's off, got girls' night going. They went to see, what's that new Housemaid or something?
Oh, man. Yep. Well, my wife went and saw that too. And I could just tell you, I'm sure you're going to hear all about a certain scene.
She read the book and she really wanted to see the movie.
I bet she did. Yeah. Everybody does, huh?
Yeah.
Except for us, right?
Yeah. I don't know. But she's really a lot of the driver of my interest in true crime and this stuff, because she is a true crime junkie. And she, it's funny. I think after I did a live or something with you, I went home, walk in the bedroom, and up on the TV, she had paused it, said, "I'm a killer." I'm like, yeah, another serial killer show you're watching.
That's how I got into this too, dude. My wife,
yeah,
absolutely. I listened to, or I guess whenever we would drive up north, what's the big time podcast? It's like Crime Junkies. And she would just put these things on. She'd end up falling asleep on a couple-hour drive, but I would end up listening to these things. And I'm like, these are rather insane stories. There's a handful of them, but very rarely when it gets to this level, do you see the headlines following somebody into prison, making sure that everybody still knows that he's miserable. And then the cherry on top, if that's what you want to call it, is this lawsuit. And like you said, it's clearly something that you don't typically see.
No. And there are some very creative causes of action in here, and some very, it's what we call artful pleading. These are some very smart lawyers, and they did a great job drafting the complaint. Does that mean they're going to prevail? No, it doesn't. I mean, they could, they may not. But it is what I would call some unique and some unique theories. And it's really fascinating as we go through. And part of my problem, I was rushing there at the end to get through the rest of this, is I was making so many notes. I was highlighting stuff and making so many notes on this because there's so much in here. But I think, and I can't remember if we talked about, when I was on before, if we talked about what potentially they might try to claim. Did we talk about the claims?
Well, I know from a dollar amount, and I just saw a couple comments come in the chat. They're like, how much are they asking for? I know that the rumors were 100 million each, right? So it was about 400 million total. And I didn't get through the whole thing. I got through about a third, and I was skimming, but in general, I'm very glad to hear that you've gone through it all. And one of the things that really jumped out to me, just reading this again, I'm just reading it. My interpretation of it is just really, I'm taking these words in, and I have thoughts about them. And I wrote down a couple of notes, and one of them, the first line that I wrote down was, allegations are not facts. And it seems like there's a lot of allegations in this, doesn't there?
Yeah, but that's kind of how you word a complaint, because you are alleging that these are the facts.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. I spent probably 10 years of my career doing civil litigation like this. And this is absolutely the sort of lawsuit that my firm would do. And I've drafted a lot of complaints. And yeah, we have to allege what the facts are. Usually when I'm putting facts in a complaint, I want to make sure that there is some substance to it, so that if someone asks during the course of discovery, this allegation, do you have any facts to back it up? Yes, there's this report or this photo or this testimony in this other case or this witness that is going to say that. So the factual statements very likely have some basis in reality. The difficulty that they have here is tying it all together and finding some sort of duty on the part of Washington State to control Koberger, or to show that they had any responsibility to this area where the incident occurred.
Well, and so let's get into this. I have the PDF downloaded. I can pull that up on screen, but I'm not sure if before I kind of put us off to the side and I make that full screen, is there any, notes that you have kind of off the jump you want to maybe start with or set the tone with, I guess, to maybe summarize for people that haven't had a chance to read it all from your opinion as a professional? What jumped out the most outside of the fact that you said this is it's a lot longer of a complaint than you'd normally see? Outside of that, what really jumped off?
They did a really good job of detailing, of laying out a factual scenario where they could argue that there was some sort of duty that Washington State had, that they failed in that duty, and that they owed a duty of care to the victims, or the area, people in the area where the victims were. And I remember reading the government complaint that or about the government claim that they filed, which has to precede any lawsuit filed against a government entity. And I remember wondering, how are they going to do that? How are they going to tie Washington State University to the victims in Moscow, Idaho? And this kind of answers those questions. Does it mean that a court is going to allow this to go to trial? Nope, it doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, they could. I don't know. But it is how we would very, I guess, charitably say this is very good, artful pleading.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, and that's good perspective. Can I ask you something that might be out of pocket, but I'm curious, because you've been practicing law now for 2 decades, about?
Just almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Next December will be 30 years.
Congratulations. And let me ask you this now, if you can answer this. I don't know if this is like an unwritten rule to ask a lawyer or not, but I'll just let it fly. Would you have taken this on? Like, would you? Yeah.
Oh, this is too big of a case for me. I don't want any part of a case that's this widespread and this involved, because it's a lot of boring work.
I feel that.
I just wouldn't want to do. I mean, it's fascinating to sit back and watch and look at it, but just the thought of the discovery in this case is going to be so tedious. There's going to be a lot of associate attorneys that are going to be spending a lot of time drafting discovery and reading documents and taking depositions. I've probably taken 300 depositions maybe over the course of the 30 years. I don't care if I never take another deposition. They're just boring to me.
Yeah.
So that's really where it is. This is a lot of work, and I haven't researched these law firms, but I notice right here. Let me see. We've got one in Kansas City, and sorry, show my age. Gotta get my glasses on. And then Tacoma, Washington. So those are the local attorneys. So what they did is they went out apparently and got a big plaintiffs firm out in Kansas City to come in and do this. So they've probably got a lot of attorneys and a lot of time and a lot of money to be able to litigate this and do the discovery.
What do you think, ballpark, before this gets started, what would you estimate this is going to cost?
Oh, well, it's not going to really cost the plaintiffs. Well, actually, it's going to. The plaintiffs don't have to pay the fees of the attorneys. The attorneys are very likely on a contingent fee, so they will probably take anywhere between 25 to 33% of any recovery that they get. The other thing is, an attorney firm is not going to take on this big of a case. Well, there's two reasons they might. One, they like the publicity. They like to put out there, we take the big case. This is huge, and we're a big plaintiff firm, and we'll take these cases on. Sometimes it's kind of a loss leader for them, where they'll take the big case, and the publicity it generates for them it makes up whatever fees if they don't prevail. Or they are confident they're going to win and get a big settlement. When you're talking about damages for something like this, they could be pretty substantial.
And that's where I think where my brain goes is this to blow the whistle, or is this to contain fallout of what we've currently kind of seen started to roll out with audio that people have FOIA requested, with the documents that have come out? Like, that's one thing that I'm so curious to see play out is, are they containing this? Or is this going to be something where when you, myself, and Kristen spoke on the phone, Kristen brought up a point. They're like, I wonder if WSU is going to countersue Idaho and say, well, why are we getting sued? They're going to go ahead and sue Idaho then.
Yeah. I don't think this is to blow the lid off of everything. And I don't see any facts really alleged. I don't see a lot of involvement that they're claiming with the police in Idaho. Other than to the extent that they're trying to create a relationship there that can put liability on WSU.
Okay.
So I think it would be more in the terms of containing it. And to be honest, when I was a plaintiff's lawyer, we loved it when someone was hit by a car that had a company name on the side of it, or a truck that had a company name on the side, because that's the deep pockets. That's what you're looking for as a plaintiff's attorney. You want to, who can we sue that has the deep pockets? For the actual crime, Idaho's not necessarily you're not gonna find a lot of liability there unless there was something specifically that they would have known, because he came from Washington. But for Washington State, he was an employee of Washington State University. So that's where you get the theory of the control that they have over him, that you can potentially sue them for that.
That's interesting. And as I get this pulled up, you said something about seeing a company name on the side of the car. I remember being in college, and where I went to school, we didn't get scholarships for being an athlete. But I did think to myself, I'm like, I wonder if I could get hit by a car and just like maybe get like a bruised shoulder or something and get this semester paid for. I actually have had that thought, Ron.
When I started with my law firm, they were involved in this big case, or actually I came on to help draft an appeal for it. Even though we won, the judge took away a lot of the verdict. That's what we were appealing. But the facts were, our client was riding a bike high on meth.
Was it Molly?
Semi-truck went down the side of the road. A semi-truck was making a right turn. He drove into the truck, and my boss was able to get a verdict in his favor, and the jury awarded $3 million.
To the guy riding the bike?
The guy riding the bike.
Oh my God.
They were able to show that there was some negligence on the part of the truck driver. And it's joint and several liability, meaning, if you're a defendant, you are responsible for, any of the damages. I think it was probably reduced some by the amount of fault that our client had. He certainly had some fault, but apparently the driver of the truck didn't properly check his mirrors, and he contributed to the collision. And so I think this is the result of where are the deep pockets, who's someone that we can sue. And what I remember, we would always deal with people asking about, why do you do this? Why are you suing for all these millions of dollars? Well, my clients can't get, they can't get their healthy body back. They can't get their loved one who passed away back. The only way that our system of civil justice gives them recompense is by money. Money rules here. And so if you want to try to hold somebody responsible in the civil sense, you sue them for money, and they pay you money, because that's the only currency available to try to make somebody right, which they never, it will never happen. They will never bring back the people who were killed, but it can provide some sense of justice.
And what Delilah just said to that point about the $3 million lawsuit that you just talked about, the guy being high on meth doesn't matter.
No.
What?
No, because the driver still has a duty to watch for people, regardless of their condition. That's why the bike rider had some liability, and he I don't remember the specifics exactly, but I think the total verdict was reduced for some of his contribution to the negligence. And I think our appeal was the judge ended up saying that's unconscionable and reduced it to like 1.2 million, I think.
Dude, I feel like, and this is a rather harsh comment, but I feel like that's how people end up getting killed after the fact, because they're probably so angry about it. Like, I cannot believe that this guy who was high on meth riding a bike into my company truck just took me for $3 million and I have to settle with 1.2. Like, that's how you end up. That just seems crazy to me, dude.
Yeah. But that's what came to mind when you ask, why are they suing Washington State? That's where the deep pockets were. We sued the truck company. We didn't sue the driver. We sued the truck company.
Oh my God, dude. Well, I appreciate the background on that. And I think that really sets the stage for what we're going to go into. So now I'm going to bring up on screen here. I have just a PDF. I know you got a bunch of notes. So I'm going to essentially kind of give you the floor. If you got notes that you want to go over, and I don't know if you have the page numbers, don't feel like if you don't, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, you do. So then I can go ahead and I can search for them, but I'm going to kind of give you the floor, and why don't you and take your time, just talk us through from a lawyer's perspective. How are you breaking this down? Because I think that's something that a lot of us want to hear that aren't in this profession, is like, how would a lawyer look at this? So I'll get this up on screen here.
Yeah. Okay. And right there, you're right on the very first thing. And I'm looking there at that paragraph 2. WSU brought Brian Kohlberger to Pullman, Washington. And that's part of their whole theory of liability on the part of Washington State. Is this just wasn't, someone who happened to be there. They brought him to Washington. He would not be in Washington State except for them bringing him. And the hope, I think, is that gives them some sense of responsibility over him. And as we'll see later in the complaint, to the collective area of Pullman and Washington and Moscow, Idaho. And you see that right there in paragraph 3. Pullman's only a few miles from Moscow, Idaho. They're trying to give the impression that this is just one community, because they've got some really difficult obstacles to overcome. Because generally, if you're thinking about what liability Washington State might have for its employees and who their responsibility is owed to, it's the students and the students and parents and employees of the university. So what they have to do is find a theory to expand that sphere of influence, sphere of control and responsibility outside of the simple campus of Washington State and expand it out to include Moscow, Idaho.
Well, let me ask you this, Ron. So I just had a comment up there,
Mhm.
and it just flew by, but somebody said I'm paraphrasing, excuse me, what they said. And it was, I'm shocked that the professor that recommended him out there isn't included in this. And then also, to segue one of my own questions onto that, is this as simple as Brian just, like, they offered and he accepted and he paid tuition? Or how can you say that WSU brought him there? And I have a follow-up, but I'm curious to hear your answer.
I think I'm trying to see. I think there's some allegations that they recruited him, but I don't think it's much more than that. But the fact that they gave him that offer, and I'll look as we go through. I'll see. Maybe I have some notes on that I've forgotten right now, or that will come to it. I would think if they identified him through some sort of a program, and I think I understand that they were part of some wider program. It may have been administered through the FBI, where he was put in touch with them and they offered to bring him out, and they employed him. And I think that employment is a big part of it as well, because employers do have some control over their employees. And for instance, if he had let's say that one of these girls was a student at Washington State, but she was living over there in Moscow, and she was in one of his classes, and she requested some extra tutoring, and he went over there as a tutor in his capacity as a graduate student, TA or whatever he was. He went over, and during the course of the tutoring, he killed her. Well, then that would far more directly tie the liability of Washington State to him, because he was, at the time that he committed the murder, he was in the course and scope of his duties as an employee. There's much bigger obstacles than that here, because he wasn't actually engaged in the course and scope of his duties. And so that's why you go through 200 pages of a complaint to try to lay out the factual pattern that will bring that will extend their control and their influence out to the Idaho 4.
And Blue Eyed Candy, thank you for the big super chat. Blue Eyed Candy asked, what are the chances that this would prompt WSU to speak to Brian Koberger about assisting in an appeal? It's a great question. What effect, if any, would Brian Koberger appealing have on this case?
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting question, and I hadn't thought of that, and I'm glad you brought it up. And just to clarify, and just shout out to the custody queens. We've actually got an episode that's going to be dropping soon where we talk about the post-judgment and appellate stuff in that case. The appeal, right? The direct appeal is gone, but there are post-judgment things that where he could have the verdict set aside, for instance, or the plea set aside if it's determined that there was exculpatory evidence or so forth that was withheld. I would think that as part of this, especially if Washington State was worried about if this complaint gets past the stages where it looks like it's going to go to a jury, it might be in their interest for Brian to be exonerated. But the problem with that is it's very likely that process in getting the plea set aside would take a lot longer than it might for this complaint to get to a jury.
Now that's interesting, because we know that in a civil case, correct me if I'm wrong, but again, I'm going off of our previous conversation, the burden of proof is way lower.
Yeah.
And so you had mentioned the FBI, and was there some sort of recruiting? If you remember, again, the first time you were on the stream, I had talked about this funding that the NIJ gave to WSU. I do wonder, and I would find it hard to believe that if you're about to sue for $100 million for each victim, that a law firm wouldn't dive into funding of a college, right? They would have to. I would argue that that's almost like day one stuff, right? Who's funding them? What would have made Brian want to go to this criminology department? Oh, I wonder if it's exactly in what he's excelling at DeSales, and it's psychology of predictive criminal behavior. That's pretty remarkable in my opinion. I don't know if that matters from a burden of proof that they brought him there rather than just offering and he accepted.
Well, I think that they brought him there is part of the theory, and that does help bolster their claim. I don't know whether it would go so far as to diving into the funding, because I don't know that necessarily. It's more the fact that he was brought as opposed to why they brought him.
That's interesting.
Just the fact that they brought him is what they need to support their theory.
Again, that kind of goes to like the burden of proof seeming rather low. So why it doesn't matter. It's just, did you? Is that really how simple it could be in this?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so on that. Now, if the why would really help them and help bolster it, perhaps, but I don't know that the funding of it by the FBI is really going to lead them anywhere. And I don't know that you want to mess with the FBI anyway.
No, of course not. Because next thing you know, you're on the Clinton body count list. But Kristen sent a super chat, said, "You guys are amazing. Please continue getting the truth and the real legal analysis out there. You both are absolute rock stars." Well, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate you. And shout out to Kristen. Kristen is the only reason why Ron and I are talking tonight. I had called her just to get her thoughts, and she's like, I'm dialing in Ron. I'm dialing in Ron right now. So
it was totally random that I was sitting here with nothing to do on a Friday night. That's no other Friday night is like that for me.
I love it. Well, I feel honored, like I said, dude. And I'm grateful to have you here. So as you're reading through this, I mean, obviously the first couple sentences, it says, this is what popped out to me. And then we can move on to some of your notes you got. But they say it's an employee with a known history of threatening, stalking, and predatory behavior. They go on to claim, I believe, 13 formal complaints or something like that. But but ultimately, isn't it weird how I have to get my mind right that what Bill Thompson said in the plea hearing and the sentencing, am I right in thinking that even though he said he did not stalk them, this was not sexually motivated, yada, 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 does that affect anything in what's alleged here legally or no?
The sexual nature of it?
Or just like anything that Bill Thompson said, does it really affect any of this or no?
I don't know. I didn't see any indication of that. All the stalking and predatory behavior that they talk about appears to me to be designed to tie Washington State to the murders, because that's what his conduct was. I mean, this guy was weird.
I mean, dude, it's just so okay. All right, now you tell me. Now I'll shut up. I want to hear. Well, we got one question that just came in, so we'll do this quick. And the Blue Eye Candy. You know what? I got this. I don't know if you ever saw the Top Dog Award, Ron, but my mods got me this. The GOAT now. So Blue Eyed Candy, you're goated for that. Thank you so much for always supporting with the super chats. I appreciate you. And she asked, what about Dr. Catherine or what about Dr. Ramslin? Was she the one that recommended him? I know I just kind of briefly brought that up. Would that be unusual to see her name in this? And is it in this? I don't think it is.
I don't remember seeing her name in this. Yeah.
But would that be unusual?
I'm not. I don't even know exactly who she is. Is she with Washington State or is she with someone else?
No, it was Brian's professor during his undergrad studies that had worked with the BTK, and a lot of people have said maybe that's a connection with the FBI. And did she tell him, "Oh, there's a bunch of funding going on"? I've certainly speculated that, but she clearly kind of carries a big stick at DeSales.
I would look at it this way. This is already a tough sell to find liability on the part of Washington State because of how tenuous the connection is with the Idaho 4. To take that back even one more step to the person who referred him to Washington State, then you got a whole new world of difficulty, and you're stretching that rubber band out way beyond probably where it's going to break.
It makes sense to me. And Love and Other Habits also had a question for you. Said, wouldn't it be better to sue the Pullman police since they interviewed him for an internship and they ran his fingerprints, and then she put due diligence? How do you interpret that?
Well, they interviewed him, and if I remember correctly, they didn't hire him, right?
Right. They said socially he wouldn't be good. Yeah.
I think it's because that process would be far more limited compared to what he went through and should have gone through with Washington State, which is what the allegations are. And you see more of that as they go through describing all the processes that they have in place and the evaluations that could and should have, according to the complaint, been conducted.
That it's just it again, you almost 3 decades practicing law. Whenever I read legal documents, I interpret it as if I'm reading any other article, but the words really matter in stuff like this. And I think that's what I really appreciate about having you here right now. And so I got this pulled back up. What else stuck out to you, Ron?
Let me see.
And
I thought it was really interesting that they made reference a couple of times in here to the Danny Rawling murders.
Let me pull that up.
And
page number. I'll just type in Danny right here. So we got
and they did it there, and also let me see if I wrote down later where they did. Then they talked about it in more detail and actually made a comparison. But I thought that was really interesting. And when they brought it up at first, I wasn't familiar really with the Danny Rawling. Apparently, I after I researched it a little bit, meaning I Googled it. Looked at AI about it. I do remember hearing that the movie Scream was based on on a true crime, and that's the one that apparently the movie Scream was based on. This was a serial killer in was it Florida, who murdered. This says murdered 5 college students in Gainesville. And so I looked and I wanted to see what the difference are. And there are some similarities, but there are some differences to that too. And I'm just really curious why that was brought up, other than his search history included research on it. And there were some similarities. He used a knife. I looked at it from the perspective that one was in different locations, and there weren't any because I wanted to look. The big problem I've been having with this is the limited amount of time he has to stab 4 people 200 plus times or whatever it was, while 2 other people are in the house and nobody's raising enough of an alarm for that. And that's just I noted that Danny Rawling, the people that he killed were the only ones in those houses at the time. So he didn't have to deal with that. And there were a lot bigger windows of time that it could have happened.
Well, you bring up a good point, and it actually it brings me to a comment. I'm not going to change the screen just because I don't want to click around and mess it up. But there was a comment left on one of my posts specifically about what you just said, and oddly enough, the guy's name is Ron. This wasn't you, was it? Did you leave a comment on there with a different username? That'd be hilarious. But did you talk about, to answer the question on the time frame, like taking a scientific approach? That would be a crazy coincidence if this was you and I had no idea.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember all the comments I leave.
No, but in general,
Yeah.
in general, let me just say, I got a really interesting comment, and it
Mhm.
was just talking about like there's the logistical issue, there's the energy of what it would take from a person
Mhm.
to actually commit this crime, and there's at the end of the day, there is a specific like set amount of time
Mhm.
that this would take that is impossible with what is laid out. And I just thought it was a great I just thought it was a great point to bring up after you had just said that because it's so true, right? And
Mhm.
and a lot of people have talked about the timeline and how it doesn't make sense and all the BS that came out in the documentaries and stuff like that. And to get back to the lawsuit here, I'm going to read this just in case people are only listening. It says, subsequent forensic examination of Koberger's electronic devices revealed that he had performed many searches regarding home invasions, co-ed killings, and serial killers. Koberger's search history also revealed internet searches about psychopaths, paranoia, and porn involving exclusively non-consensual sex acts. Koberger's search history also included a research on a serial killer named Danny Rowling, who murdered 5 college students in Gainesville, Florida, by entering a college apartment through a sliding glass door, masked and dressed in black, stabbed his victims to death using a K-bar knife. All features of Koberger's later murders. I mean, man, I go back to just the fact that this dude's a criminology student. How many other cases did they not? I mean, how far back can they go in a search history?
They probably could go back pretty far. I mean, and it would probably be in their best interest to do that because that would show that this is something that's been brewing for a long, long time. And the longer term fascination he's had with it, probably the more chance there should have been for them to discover it and do something about it. And there's some things later on in this complaint where they allege why they should have found it, and we'll get to that.
Yeah. So we've kind of gone over just in general how they started this. You said you thought it was interesting that they're bringing up Danny Rowling, who this is damn near a mirror of what happened, right? Outside of there being 5 victims compared to 4.
Yeah.
What do you got next?
Well, my next note here is what I did is I was going through the complaint and I marked it up a little bit, and then I made notes as I went through it, kind of my thought process, what I was thinking as I'm reading through this. And the next thing that I talk about was there's lots of talk about internal policy of Washington State. And my comment at that time, before I got to the meat of what they were doing, is those don't give a duty to outsiders. And so I thought it might come up in a discussion of knowledge of a violation or circumstance, but internal policies don't give rise to an independent duty to someone else who's not related to the organization. And they did address that later on. And so it's really that was of interest to me.
Can you break that down? So in like kind of like in layman's terms, what would that mean?
Well, it means that if you have an internal policy, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you violate that policy, that you have some responsibility to people outside the sphere of your influence. Like if I violate an internal or if I'm an employee of Washington State and I violate an internal policy of Washington State, or if someone there violates the policy, that doesn't mean that they owe a duty to anybody outside. The way that usually comes up in a complaint like this is if their knowledge of their actions become an element. And so if they have policies that they violate, then they should have known that what they were doing was not correct. But that doesn't take it to the next step you did something wrong, but did that cause what happened way over here? So what I was noting is that doesn't quite bridge that gap that I was looking for how they were going to bridge.
My question goes onto the opposite side of the spectrum.
Mhm.
And that is, what if they would have fired him and he would have came back to school with a gun and shot it up? Right? Like, how do you know?
You don't, yeah. And in fact, one of their concerns and why they didn't terminate him is, and they even put it here in the complaint, is that they were afraid that he might file a civil lawsuit against them.
That Koberger might?
Yeah.
Holy shit, that is ironic, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a far less drastic result than what really happened.
Wow.
And I guarantee that one of the reasons they specifically put that in the complaint is they want to be able to characterize this as Washington State was more concerned about their exposure monetarily than they were about the safety of these people in the community.
It just seems so. It just seems like a giant stretch that this somehow like. So yeah, I don't want to distract you. So okay, so
it is a stretch.
Yeah,
I mean it really is. It's a really fascinating one to me, and the fact that it's great lawyering doesn't necessarily mean that they've that it's going to survive. But they've done a really good job in trying to bridge that gap, I think.
Leslie and Billy has a interesting question here, and it says, Bertie, will you ask Ron why in other cases, such as the Ted Bundy case, once the case is closed, like all the documents come out, information's unsealed, why are Brian's still being held? And in a situation like this, with like the discovery, are we going to get to see everything unredacted, or is there still a way for them to keep all that hidden, or is it separate?
No, I think they'll probably keep a lot hidden. And I'm not familiar with how much came out on Ted Bundy. I do know there's probably not a lot of doubt that he committed all the murders. And
Right.
so there's really no reason why they would need to withhold stuff, but there's a lot of discretion that the judge has, and probably the prosecution and what public interest. They don't want to release stuff with gruesome details. They don't want to alarm the public. They can come up with lots of reasons why they wouldn't disclose these things. And unless someone who of greater authority than them comes in and says, nope, you got to release them, they're not going to release them.
Yeah. They're kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Why do the extra work kind of thing? That makes sense. It does make sense, as maddening as it is. I understand why somebody would do that. And Uncle Daddy, I've seen this question come in from a couple other people. A lot of people have asked about Dylan Mortensen. Could they call DM back in when it comes to a case like this specific lawsuit? Could she ever become relevant in this?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, because this is looking at the relationship between Koberger and Washington State. And that's really where this exclusively lies. What happened, the relevant time period for this is up until, to the mostly, there are a couple of things, but it is when the murders happen. Once the murders happen, that most of everything after that is irrelevant, because you're looking at the relationship between Brian and Washington State.
That makes sense to me. And do they mention Dylan in this? I just controlled F'd it, and I didn't see Dylan's name pop up
in the complaint.
Yeah,
no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So you went over some of their policies. They clearly they're screenshotting it. They're getting very specific about policy 15, which is their policy prohibiting discrimination and harassment. And they go ahead and they list out those things. It says that it obligated to control Koberger, which then also recognizes it can impact the community. Again, that's where I'm saying I read these things sometimes too straight up, where I'm sure in legal language that means something, right? It does. Like, what are they trying to allege? You got to go through the rest of the document clearly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, this is again part of trying to establish a duty on Washington State, and for there's different elements. There has to be a duty. Did they violate that duty? And did that duty cause damage? You got to have evidence of all of those elements. So this is going to the question of, did they have some sort of a duty? And again, they're pointing at these internal policies. They bring up Title IX because that's a federal statute, and the violation of a federal statute can give a basis for a claim for damages. If they violated Title IX and it caused damage, then that's a cause of action. That's a theory of liability.
Yeah. I mean, you do a great job at explaining it. It makes sense even without me knowing the law, like how you just said that. I could see how there's the legal argument for it, where that's something, again, that I'm consistently having to remind myself of. And real quick, I'm going to let you answer this. I got to grab my water. I left it on the counter, but Blue Eyed Candy gave another massive super chat. Just completely goated. Thank you so much. And Blue Eyed Candy said, if it's not for monetary gain, what else could this be about? And I'll be back in 20 seconds.
I think it's part of the grief and closure process, potentially. It could be, you can't, there's going to be a lot of anger. And I think we've seen that a lot throughout this process. And so I think it's part of the families potentially trying to deal with this. I'm angry. I've lost my daughter. I've lost my son. Somebody needs to pay. I need closure. I need somebody else. I need everybody who was responsible to take that responsibility and to somehow pay for that. And so there is going to be a big emotional aspect to this, as well as the monetary aspect. That's really important to the attorneys. But I think for a lot of, I hated as a lawyer when I had a client come to me and say, it's not about the money. I just want, when we're trying to get them to settle or something, because we see some big problems in the case and we're like, you need to take the money. It's not about the money. It's about the principal. Well, the principal doesn't pay me. I don't get paid by prevailing on principle or by chasing principle. So for the attorneys, it's all about the money, because that's how they continue to support the families. But I think there definitely is a big emotional aspect to this, and going through this and seeing somebody else be found to have responsibility and then have to pay for that responsibility. It does provide some emotional satisfaction.
What was the Cliff Note version of that?
There's definitely an emotional aspect to this as well. Sense of closure, sense to make sure that everybody who's responsible bears some of that responsibility for the loss.
Caleb says, feelings over facts, which is almost kind of how I started this, saying like allegations are not facts, but you said, well, in a complaint, all you really have are allegations. So, okay.
Yeah, you have the allegations. Plaintiff alleges this, and then in order to sustain a verdict, to get a verdict, did the facts match the allegations? Did they prove their allegations? If they did, then the jury can enter a verdict. If not, then the jury denies it.
That makes sense to me. And thank you again, Blue Eyed Candy, for that. You rock. What else you got, Ron? Because this is great. Because you've gone through this, and I would say this is probably, in my opinion, what the Idaho 4 case headlines are going to start to be about, is this lawsuit. Would you agree with that? As far as, yeah.
And media love these big lawsuits, and yeah, this is gonna be the source of some talk for the next few months, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't doubt it, dude. I don't. And you just tell me what page you want me to pull up, and I'll control F it. And
all right, I got something on page 27.
okay, 27. All right. This is page 27.
So yeah, paragraph 105.
Okay.
So the threat assessment teams, I love that, the TATs, commonplace at colleges and universities, become a critical part of the standard of care. And that's the word, standard of care, is what jumps out at me as a lawyer, because that triggers to me the liability. Did they act within, was there an applicable standard of care to how they handled his employment and these complaints and so forth? And if there was, did they violate it? I wrote my big note right here on the complaint with an exclamation point is expert testimony. And this is screaming that they have an expert who they are going to have come in and testify that there was a particular standard of care for preventing violence on the campus that they were supposed to follow, and that they violated that in some way. Another reason why the expert testimony on this is so important is because there are some hurdles that any complaint has to get over before it gets to a trial. The first of those usually is called a demurrer. And what that means is that the judge looks at the complaint on its face, accepting everything in the complaint as true. Does this state a cause of action, and does it raise a tribal issue of fact? And this, by raising the standard of care, that's something that would necessitate an expert coming in, and something then that you would need to get past the demurrer stage to create a tribal issue of fact here. And so this is part of their attempt to get it to the jury by saying it is part violation standard of care. There's another step even after the demurrer, which is a summary judgment, in which the defendant, in this case Washington State, will submit a motion for summary judgment. And in support of that, they will attach affidavits, declarations, discovery responses, and so forth, and try to say that the plaintiffs have not come up with sufficient tribal issue of fact to even take to the jury. Meaning, if this was submitted to the jury on the facts that have been raised to this point or been discovered to this point, then the jury could not find a verdict. And courts love to grant these, because if you grant a motion for summary judgment, you don't have to go through a trial, which in some cases can take weeks of court time. And these courts have lots and lots of cases and lots of trials to get through. The plaintiff, in order to overcome the summary judgment, has to give declarations, affidavits, discovery, and so forth on every element of the cause of action that's challenged by the defendant. And part of that is going to be expert testimony saying, yes, this was the standard of care here, and here's how they breached it. And then the court has to take that as in dispute, and that creates on that issue a tribal issue of fact that will overcome summary judgment and get you to a jury.
So to kind of unpack that, a very simple question that Delilah had: does him being autistic affect any of that standard action, or no? Or would that be a rather hard argument in this?
Well, situation? They certainly bring it up.
Right.
And I think it's part of this kind of as a whole on what they did, because that's relevant to what their internal processes are and some evaluations that it's argued they should have done, because they are claiming that among the signs of somebody who would commit a heinous crime like this is the lack of emotion or difficulty with emotion that comes with someone who's autistic.
I just saw a comment flew by, and they're like, for God's sakes, this is a school. It's not a psych ward, right? Like that just seems like, so, I mean, it's so interesting to hear your perspective about how, although Brian Koberger is the face of this murder, this is really a WSU lawsuit. It just seems so weird for me to, after everything that we've looked into with this case and how many oddities there are, and oh, I hope that discovery brings X, Y, or Z up. And you look at this, and to your point, it's 126 pages. They're bringing up Title IX. They're bringing up policies. They're bringing up standard of care. It just seems like a lot to go through, which has been a pattern in this case, dude. It really is. They've always just thrown so much at anybody trying to defend themselves.
Yeah. I love that comment about this is a school, not a daycare.
Yes.
But the funny thing is that leads right into what's coming up next. Then comes the explanation is why is all of this important? So I go to, let's see, page, is it 119 is on page 30.
30?
Yeah.
All right, here's page 30.
All right, and you see up at the top there, this heading is WSU was obligated to control Koberger under its waiver 21 threat assessment and intervention protocols. And this is where it comes in why this is a little higher standard than a school might have just for non-threatening students or employees. And this is where the theory is that the liability comes in. If you look down at paragraph 119, the allegation is, and this is kind of a conclusory allegation, that they then go into a number of paragraphs after this, kind of explaining this, laying it out. WSU was obligated to control Koberger under its waiver 21 threat assessment and intervention protocols. Now, what is that?
Right.
Well, there we go. The next, it's a conflict avoidant manager that allows behavioral issues. Warns about a manager. Okay.
So what does that mean? Does that mean so it warns about the conflict avoidant manager who allows behavioral issues to fester, which is particularly prevalent in some institutions of higher learning? What the hell is even that? What does that mean?
This is an assessment that must be done, and they put it in place to protect the students and faculty and everyone who's involved with the school, because this is not a little elementary school or a high school. This is a big university with thousands of students and probably hundreds, if not thousands of employees. It's kind of its own little entity there. And there's a lot of things that can happen that if you have an accident or an incident that occurs on the campus or involves somebody who's employed, then the school can be liable. And so what they want to do is try to identify those things and try to prevent those things from happening in the first. And this is an assessment. It's a tool to assess threats in individual situations and circumstances.
Dude, I don't want to distract you, but I don't know if you have the same sense of it. When I say sense of humor, it's just it's relevant. And Tony Stevenson 26 said the university should just say, we didn't know if Koberger was a dream or if it was real.
Well, it worked for Dylan, didn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean, dude. Like, that's a good defense, apparently.
Yeah. So this is part of they're trying to develop the obligation that Washington State has to control him. And this is where the autism spectrum comes in, but it's part of, and this is, I'm at page 32.
Okay.
First, there's a lot of discussion about what this is and what it does. And it is, like it said, it assesses risk. And by doing that, it identifies a lot of risk factors. Autism spectrum is one of those. There's others, like in 129, someone who displays anger or causes fear in others. And so there are a number, and I looked up what this was. It's a pretty legitimate threat assessment. And I learned a new word from this.
What's that?
Erotomania. Paragraph, page 33.
Erotomania.
And I love it. See, I was an English major, and I'm a writer at heart. And it's not often that I learn a new word that I've never seen. And this is an awesome one. Erotomania, a delusional belief that another person is infatuated with a perpetrator despite distinct objective evidence to the contrary.
That is that seems like an insane word to describe like a creep that doesn't get the hint.
Yeah. It's so funny because my mind went right to this kid I knew in college who shares a lot of characteristics as I'm reading here in Coburg. I remember one time there's a girl in our apartment complex. We had a big kind of rectangle apartment complex where all the apartments faced inward. And so we call it the fishbowl. And so everyone knew everyone. But a girl from the other side of the apartment complex came over, and she was using our computer. She left, and this guy came down, and he started freaking me out. He was sniffing the chair where she was sitting because he was so infatuated with her.
Okay, so yeah, he's a freak. He's a freak's freak, and
he's a freak. I don't know. I was wondering as I was thinking about it, I tried looking him up. I can't find him, so I don't know if he's still around anywhere or if he's in jail somewhere.
I would bet he's probably in jail for sniffing something. He should have kept his nose out of whatever the hell got him there, I guess.
Yeah,
Jesus.
But that's he kind of characterized this erotomania. So I love that. I love that word that I learned.
I'm happy that I know it too. And oh man, it's always interesting when stuff like that comes up because it's tough when the narrative has told us all of this about Brian, but we haven't heard Brian talk. There's really no digital footprint of this man, even before the crime, where you can see him at parties. Nobody's coming out and saying that they really know him, and anybody that does, they just get shit on right away. They're like, you're lying. You didn't really know him. There's just this weird aspect of it where you really only get to hear what Ashley Banfield, Nancy Grace, any of the big three media channels say about him. So when they kind of lump all of this stuff into it, and you think about maybe a predisposed bias in the average normie's mind, this lines up exactly with everything that they've heard for the last 3 years about this man.
Yeah. And frankly, after reading all of this, I'm not sure I want to hear from him.
Right.
Aside from the fact he's in prison for a quadruple murder, I just don't want, he creeps me out just reading about him.
Well, and so let me ask you this. Is it smart for him to just continue to be quiet at this point legally? Would you recommend that?
Legally, no. I think the better legal thing for him is to try to fight the plea. But perhaps for his safety or safety of others around him, yeah, it's probably in his best interest to keep quiet.
There was somebody had also just asked you real quick. Again, I apologize. Leslie and Billy, I believe, is the username that said that. And I don't want to distract from going down the document, but it was a question that I had earlier that I'd forgotten about, and it's going back to how Kristen said, could WSU just throw this onto Idaho? Who can WSU just pass blame to? Could it be the survivors for not calling 911 for 8 hours? Could it be, I don't know, the police? Could it be like, can they do that or no? Are they stuck with this?
They can point, and it's kind of the empty chair. They can point it. We're not the ones who are directly responsible. It's them. They don't even have to bring, and they probably don't want to bring them into the lawsuit because then they would defend themselves. But as long as they're not in the lawsuit, they can still point to them and say they're the ones that are really responsible.
Yeah. Would you expect that to happen?
Yeah, they're going to point the finger other places. The big issue is I don't know that they would be able to get a lot of discovery because Idaho's a different state. Idaho's not under the jurisdiction of this court, and they can't really order them to the police department or anybody else they're pointing the finger at to give up discovery or facts. Now there are processes you can go through, and depending on the state, there's a little there are different processes. But the fact that it's a different state kind of shields them a bit. But I don't know that they necessarily want to bring them in anyway, because then they can point to the open chair and blame it on them, and the open chair can't talk back.
Well, and so that's a good question here, because I know we've gone through a couple bullet points. I want to hear the rest. I just want to hear your opinion, if you're able to. Mm-hmm. How would you 30-second elevator pitch each? We don't got to spend too much time, but just briefly, how would you win this if you were suing WSU? What do you think is like, this is going to be the X factor? And then on the opposite side, how do you defend against it?
If you win it, you have to establish that WSU owed some duty based on their control and knowledge of Brian to the community at large, not just the campus, not just even Pullman, but the Pullman Moscow community. And there's a number of places in here where they are trying to tie them together and to, in fact, treat Washington State and U of Idaho as essentially companion universities here.
Okay, I see that. And so now, if you were on the WSU side, is the best course of action to point to the empty chair, as you said?
Well, I think the best course of action is to point at Koberger and say, this was him. We had, even all of this stuff that they're alleging, that doesn't mean that we knew he was going to go murder 4 girls in an apartment.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
It really is insane. And to me, it kind of shows like how much something can snowball. And I'm not downplaying a quadruple multi-victim homicide, but there's a lot of multiple victim homicides every day, every weekend, right? Yeah. And to see it snowball into this is
yeah, again, if he wasn't an employee of Washington State, I don't think you'd see the lawsuit, because there is it's a deep pocket thing. That's one of the first questions that I would ask as a plaintiff's lawyer is was this person in the course and scope of their employment? Because that's where the deep pockets are.
Well, and Blue Eye Candy, God damn, Blue Eye Candy, you rock. You get the all-time GOAT tonight. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, for real. And
there's a lot in here that we're going to answer that question.
Yeah, well, it's a great question because it timed up perfectly. Like, it came right into the chat as you finished your last remark. And so it says, our Blue Eye Candy asked, but what else could WSU really vet about Brian Koberger? A background check, would that have really helped? I don't think it would have either.
Well, there's a lot more here that they talk about, and I think that's where I think a lot of the really interesting stuff comes here.
Okay.
Let's go to page 37.
Page 37. All right. Let me get us back up here, full screen. Okay, 37 right here.
Yeah. I've got, let me see, paragraph 144. And this is where they start to answer that question. Is they're obligated to control them under the terms of the WSU Family and Graduate Apartment Agreement. So it's not just the employment, but there's some duty based on where he lives, because it's I love that. Put that one back up.
Oh, wait, right here.
You got a grant for predictive behavior.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so true.
That's kind of the heart of this whole thing. And
Wow.
that's a great point, because is the allegations essentially they should have been able to predict his behavior. Absolutely. I love that point.
No, it is. And to me, that kind of scratches the itch of the whole tinfoil hat that I like to talk about when it comes to this funding is there, like, if I was thinking in a chess match, right? And let's just say whether or not the attorneys bring it up, but there is this denominator in the criminology department that is predictive criminal behavior in emerging adults in a non-clinical setting, dude. That is precisely what they're saying WSU should have been able to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's very insightful
crazy.
there.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Southern Bluebell, for the comment.
Yeah. So there's I think my first comment on this was this seems like a bit of a stretch. But here it is. It is let's see, paragraph 153. So that's 2 pages, 39. Yep. WSU also retains the right to monitor usage of ResNet. They're alleging that's the internet network that he was part of. I don't, my note here was don't confuse right with obligation. But I think this is tied in with something that they bring up later, is what may create that obligation, or in their argument creates the obligation. So so I guess this was kind of foreshadowing that, but that's gonna come into it a little bit. Because here in this narrative, they're just building all of the narrative leading through to build the case for why there is the responsibility here, and that's why I say this is from a lawyer's perspective, this is extremely fascinating, because it's very well done and very well put together.
Really, you're genuinely, I could tell you're being genuine, but that's interesting.
I don't know that it's a good case, but and to me, that's almost, as I'm looking at, that's almost beside the point. I think it's very artful in the way that they've led you through this, and it's actually an interesting complaint for me to read.
Wow. I see. And then from an everyday normal person that's not a lawyer, when I hear that, I just think to myself, fuck. Because it's following this pattern with this case where it's like we're trying to get some answers. Yeah. And then you have a guy like yourself who's very decorated, you're very talented and skilled, and you've been doing this for 30 years, and you say, this is really artful and it's put together well. I'm like, damn.
I'll give you the spoiler. I don't think they're going to win.
Oh, you don't?
I don't think there's it's just I love how they've tried to go about it.
Okay. Well,
I would be very, very surprised if this got past the summary judgment.
And so explain that. So when you say when it gets past the summary judgment, are you saying that they're going to be, is that before maybe a court would say there's no basis, or where is that at in the process?
Yeah, that's before it even gets to a jury trial.
Okay.
It is the defendants would file a motion for summary judgment saying that the plaintiffs don't have enough facts to support a cause of action to go to the jury. I mean, it's possible they might not even get the demurrer, where the court has to take everything at face value in this complaint. Wow. So even if they get to this, even if they get past the initial demurrer, then they're not going to get past what I think is the more fact-driven summary judgment stage.
And so what would happen if it doesn't get to that point? Does this just go away or what?
Yeah, it gets dismissed.
And then that's it. They kind of just blew their wad on it and it's gone.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they made,
Well,
wow.
with a demurrer, they might have a chance to amend the complaint to add sufficient allegations to get them past that stage. And sometimes the court will give them some indication of why they didn't get past that stage. Then they can go back and add some more stuff in there that hopefully will get them past. And then they get into discovery and then get to summary judgment.
Does that make a better argument for WSU just settling? Or does it hurt them?
I think getting past the demurrer,
Okay.
they might, and part of it because of how much it's going to cost them to litigate this, because they have to have their own attorneys. I would expect that they would have that they would hire someone from outside. They're probably I don't know that they would have insurance that would cover this. They're probably got some sort of self-retention, but they would likely hire an outside counsel, and that's going to cost them a lot of money. I mean, we're talking, I'm sure, in excess of $1 million.
Wow. And I don't know if you saw that comment I had up from Frisco Chick. How long would WSU have to reply typically? Is it
usually it's 30 days? Yeah.
I'm curious. So no matter what, we're going to see a reply from WSU to this.
Yeah, we will likely see a demur. I would be very, very surprised if they don't demur to this. Okay. Well, take that back. One other thing they could do is try to remove it to federal court. And that would be before they get to the demur. And
just for people that don't know what a demur is, can you explain that? Because I was just going to pull up the definition of it. Yeah. I saw a couple comments go by. It's to formally say, well, go ahead. You can explain.
Yeah. Oh, no. It says, Judge, look at this complaint. Take everything that's in this complaint. Assume that it's true. Even if everything is true, this doesn't raise a tribal issue of fact that you can even take to a jury. And we don't want to waste the court's time by taking this to a jury when there's no way that they can even, under Washington law, that they can even give a verdict in favor of the plaintiffs.
Do you know, this is a good question by Ray, who is likely to be the judge? Obviously that's not going to be stated in this, but it can't be anybody, or it wouldn't be anybody from the criminal case. Is that a stupid question? It probably is, but it couldn't be the same judge, obviously.
No. There's a panel of judges who handle civil cases. This is definitely going to go to a complex civil litigation panel. Okay. And there's probably a judge or a couple of judges or a few judges that handle complex cases like this. And
Southern Bluebells on Fire said, next, they could just sue Hyundai.
Are we even sure it was a Hyundai?
Well, that's what I said. I said, I can't tell one damn make or model on 1112. I can't make any of it out, but I mean, that's crazy. So you were saying that paragraph 153 is kind of a foreshadow because WSU is it's saying that they retain the right to monitor usage of ResNet, which is the connection that anybody who lives on campus uses from like internet or.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have policies that they are allowed to monitor it. They are allowed to go in and see what they're doing. Again, that doesn't give them the duty yet. We're not quite there.
Okay.
Another building block of this is on page 41.
Okay.
Which is paragraph 161, which talks about their long and sordid history of fostering and discouraging accurate reporting of its own inappropriate sexual behavior. And I really love how they tie this into him later on. But they were going through some of their own problems. And we get the prurient details here about one of their deputies who, actually the police chief here first was viewing inappropriate emails and passing them along to others. I think from what's the case out in Boston?
Karen Reed?
Yeah, the Karen Reed
What?
trial. There was you remember the talk. If you remember that, there was talk about some of the comments that the detectives were making, passing around, and hey, maybe we'll find the news. It's probably that sort of thing.
Okay.
And I've heard it described that a police station is essentially an extension of a high school locker room. And if you think of it that way, that explains a lot of what goes on among police officers. Because, honestly, those guys were likely, a lot of the jocks and stuff spent a lot of time in locker rooms and played football and everything. And so I will know, I can tell you from experience that, I'm in my 50s and I still have a lot of the mindset that I had back when I was a teenager and in my 20s. That doesn't change. I used to wonder, when am I going to grow up and become boring like my parents? And I've come to the conclusion they were just boring. Because I haven't changed.
I feel that I can resonate with that but there is a real aspect of growing up and maturing and being able to understand when is it appropriate to, right, when you're around your buddies, right? Like, we're not going to do that whatever at work, when you shouldn't do it. If there's girls around, if you're talking, depending on what you're talking about, right? Like, even on the opposite sex, females, everybody needs to have that, and everybody knows what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. There's a time and a place for the locker room type stuff, and it's not when you're a police officer at the station.
But you've got a collection of it's a very high testosterone place. There's a lot of danger involved, and there's a lot of letting off steam involved. And so I'm not necessarily saying that it as a huge criticism. It's just how it is, and that's just the environment. And I think, and I'm not saying it to ridicule any of that. It's just that's what it is. It's an extension of the high school locker room, and I think it helps sometimes to understand some of these things that are going on if you understand that.
Yeah, no, I think
it's that brotherhood,
right? I think the majority of people understand what you're trying to say, because I understand it completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's the police chief is going through this, and then there was another officer that was having sex in the stadium with somebody that may or may not have been consensual, and this gets now into the area that Washington State has a problem with enforcing, protecting people from these things and from really enforcing their own internal policies. This is where we're getting into the breach of the duty.
Okay.
There was, let me see, page 43. This is another.
Right here. Sorry. Before we go to that, they have an article from it.
Yeah.
It says Pullman Washington State University Police Chief Steve Hansen will step down from that position, which he has held since 2000, and become a lieutenant on the force. The announcement comes at the conclusion of a WSU internal auditor's investigation into a complaint of improper computer use in the police department. According to the auditor's report, Hansen viewed emails that were sent to him containing inappropriate material, forwarded such emails to Assistant Chief Scott West, and invited other members of the department to view them. University policy forbids the use of university time and computers for such activity. Quote, "That was a mistake on my part, and I want to apologize for the embarrassment it has caused the department and the university because of the situation. I accept the administration's decision to demote me to lieutenant," Hansen said.
Oh, can I just laugh about this?
Yeah.
You tell Chumlee I said hello next time you see me at your poncho. You're not the first person that said I look like him, like Rick.
Was there a comment? Was there a comment?
That was a good one.
Oh, I didn't even see that. But you know, dude, I gotta tell you, and I promise you, I'm not just trying to just continue to overhype this and tell you how honored I am to have you. I think I speak for everybody in here, and I hope that everybody in the chat agrees with this. I'd be shocked if they didn't. I could tell that you have a really good skill at looking at something, breaking it down, and the fact that you got page numbers, paragraph numbers, and you're making it very easy for us to walk through this. I just want to say thank you as we're doing this, because I certainly really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I'm really happy to do this. I've you know, I will go home and I will sit in my room and I will want to not talk to anybody.
Yeah.
This I enjoy.
That's awesome. And that means you're in the right career, you know?
Yeah. I had this discussion with someone who works in my office that I do not have the typical attorney personality. I'm not that type A person, but I can become that when I need to or want to. It just costs me a lot of energy and I have to go home and just veg and recover from it. But I get the adrenaline. It's like when I'm in a trial, is you get going. I don't like direct examination, examining my client, but I like cross-examination.
Oh, do you?
I love, and I get into it, and it's really a big rush. And I like when I'm arguing an appeal, that little 15-minute window of time that I have, where it's back and forth. I always go up with kind of an outline and potential script and notes and everything, but I like it when the justices ask me the first question. We can go off script and just turn it into a discussion.
Yeah. And I think that's, well, and you said maybe you're not, quote unquote type A, but that's a typical type A skill, right? You're able to break it down easily.
I can do it, but I don't get energized by doing it.
I see. And
Yeah.
you're already getting sorry, go ahead, Brian. My bad.
But I enjoy it. And also, my wife probably doesn't, she hears me talk too much. So it's probably a good outlet for me to talk to you guys and not bug her so much.
Hey, well, you know what? There's times Mrs. Birdie says the same things to me. So you and I can hang out here all night. And you're already getting requests to come back for when WSU responds. So maybe we'll have to have you and if Kristen wants to or Sam, but yeah. I'd love to have you back when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
So we're moving on to page 43.
Yeah.
Or did you say 45?
43.
43. Okay.
Now 165. They mentioned that they didn't report 2 sexual assaults in violation of the Clery Act. Again, they're bringing in a statute that they've violated. So it's not just their internal policy, but a violation of a legal statute can certainly sustain a cause of action. And that's why they bring these in. That's why they want to cite to these statutes that were violated. Now, it's funny because they talk about what those violations were, and they were really pretty minor, especially compared to what we're talking about here. So they didn't. I wrote down where it was. I don't remember exactly. I think it was a mislabeling of a couple of reports. So and that's what I thought was kind of funny, because those are such minor violations, but they're violations of a statute, and you can a violation of a statute as opposed to violation of just policy, internal policy, can sustain a cause of action or give you evidence of a duty that you had and a duty that you then violated.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. I think, again, that goes back to, I've said it 4 times now, reading it without having the legal reminder of what do these words mean when you're not just reading it as if you're reading a newspaper article, Yeah.
Yeah. So the Clery Act, and so what that is, it requires colleges, and again, this shows kind of the how they're trying to broaden that sphere of influence of Washington State to include Moscow, Idaho. It requires colleges and universities to publicly report campus crime statistics, safety policies, to promote consumer protection and safety. And so that's directed to consumers. And how broadly can you stretch that, to people related to people who benefit from the university potentially. It's something that's monitored by the Department of Education. It does seem still to be directed at the protection of students, parents, and employees of the school. But there is some limited off-campus crime reporting to it. So you see them, the claws are kind of reaching out there a little bit with this in that way as well.
And Gurmila brings up a good point, and this is where you talk about what gets you excited with the cross-examination. For me, I look into a lot of true crime cases or big-time headlines, but it's really the narrative warfare. It's this Constitution. Don't use a tragedy to overstep your God-given American rights or Constitution stuff. So, I just wanted to point out what Gurmila said there, and it leads me to my question is, when does it get to policy versus Constitution in a situation like this?
In what sense? You mean
that? You're right. That was a broad question. I apologize. So when would WSU ever have no choice but to say constitutionally we're protected? Fine, we went against our policy for this, but at the end of the day, right, we have X, Y, or Z that protects us for right to work. I don't know if that's obviously not the Constitution, but I'm trying to think, when do they go above the policy and say that's just our business's policy? We have a foundation of this country to fall back on. I don't know if that makes sense.
You see the constitutional issues in something like this more in their protection of the constitutional rights, right to privacy and so forth of students, faculty, and so forth, and people including Brian, for instance. And that's why if you go back to them having the right but not the obligation to review his, for instance, his online activity, they're probably weighing, they have the right according to the policy, but at what point would they be invading his privacy by doing that over and over and over without cause?
Yes. So that's what I'm trying. That's essentially summing up what I was trying to ask, because does that, just because let's say it's on that ResNet, are they saying that Brian was looking up all that stuff on ResNet?
Yeah.
Because isn't that the only way WSU would, otherwise, what do they care if they use his data at his house or something? Okay. So I thought.
Well, and that's going to go to how you get to what their duty was and how they violated the duty, because they're alleging in here that the assessments that they had available to them, that they did not go through those. They did not follow their policy in assessing him as they should have. Had they done that, they would have discovered all of this stuff, all of the searches he was doing on serial killers. They would have discovered that he had a knife in violation of residential policies. They would have discovered that he was stalking both. And here's another place where we're trying to tie in U of I. He was stalking and had pictures of both WSU and University of Idaho students in swimsuits and so forth.
It's oh my God. You're right. It's what was the word that you had used before? It's artful, right? You could tell as you're breaking this down, even if you haven't read it, they did a good job making their point. You have a question that I don't know if you can answer, but I thought it was interesting. It caught my eye. It says redact all fact Idaho. Can Ron explain sovereign immunity in Washington versus Idaho, or maybe just sovereign immunity in general? Do you know what that is? or I don't necessarily.
Sovereign immunity applies to governmental entities. Washington State is potentially is an arm. It's a public university. You can't directly sue, like you can't directly sue University of Washington. Well, actually, let me go this. You can't sue the state of Idaho for its failures in allowing the murder or whatever. You can. There are some exceptions in some ways. They filed the claim against Washington State, which is part of the requirement for doing that. And there are certain theories that kind of pull them out of that sovereign immunity. This is essentially a negligent supervision type claim that they're making that is not consumed by the sovereign immunity. They are able to sue this state agency based on this theory.
That makes sense to me. And I'm not trying to cut us off from continue to go through the document. I think in general, you've broken it down enough where people are clearly going to be reading through this. I think that I know that me, you, and Kristen have talked about me going on your guys' show. We'll continue to break it down. I saw a couple people ask, do you have a channel yourself, or do you just go on with the Custody Queens?
Not yet.
Okay. You got to get one, Ned. You got to get one.
Yeah. Well, I not in this. I do some other things, but they're very minor at this point.
Okay.
They're not really. I think I have a TikTok I used to do that I haven't done lately. Okay. I am going to be starting a YouTube channel. We're in the process of starting what California Family Law Appellate Group through Holstrom, Block and Park and me right now. And nice. I'm started. I think I've got one video up right now. Basically, that one's tied to California family law, and where I explain some of the new published cases. I've got one up. I've got some others ready to go. But that's a new thing. There may be something that I do that comes off of the Custody Queens. We've been playing around with that. But for right now, I just kind of come on with Kristen and Sam every once in a while. Now with you,
yeah,
and, I agree. You go to Custody Queens, and you can always get to me through there.
Yeah. Well, here's what I want to do, man. I want to finish with, 2 or 3 questions, and then I'm not letting you off the stream until I show you my tinfoil hat conspiracy of the day. So You're going to have to stick around and hear me out for that. But I'm curious, Hive, let's get 2 or 3 questions here from Ron. I'll scroll up a little bit. This one, I think this is a good general question. And Ron, don't feel like you got to spend too much time on them. Just, in general, I think a lot of people are wondering this. What advice would you give Brian if he wanted to appeal? Can he appeal? So obviously, I think, yes, he can.
Okay. To that, very quickly going to say, stay tuned with Custody Queens. We actually go through that a lot.
Okay.
I think you want to look at some of these things that are coming out. You want to look at, was there any exculpatory evidence that the prosecution potentially hid from him?
Okay. And Miss K 9056, great question. Do you think WSU is going to argue that the duty of care lies with Idaho State University, or obviously the University of Idaho, for keeping their consumers and community safe?
I think they potentially could. I think they're more going to focus on, we didn't have that responsibility to them. That I guess that would be a part of it. That's not our responsibility. That's them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the response to that would be, well, Brian Koberger is yours. So I think they're probably going to focus more on it. We didn't have a duty that extended to the Idaho 4 in Moscow.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, UFO Dog, shout out to one of my mods. Thank you, UFO Dog. Do you think Brian Koberger is ever going to get out of jail?
No.
That's the
I just
Christ, dude.
Well, I think that here's what I honestly think. I think he was involved to the point that he likely was going to be in prison for a long, long time anyway. I don't think he's the one that actually did the killing.
Okay.
I think there is some sort of coercion that led to him taking the plea. And frankly, I don't know how long he's going to survive in prison, honestly.
Yeah, so I can agree with you on the fact that it's clearly becoming just a couple of things at this point, right? If it's straightforward, did he have some involvement that clearly he's something changed where Josh Hurwitz himself, he said there was no indication he was going to plea, and then something changed and he did, right? Mm-hmm. And they were preparing for trial, all this stuff. I totally 100% agree with you on your comment about how long is Brian going to survive. I tend to pick up more on like the narrative surrounding it, and it certainly seems they're making it sound like in the news, even the victim impact statements. I don't know if they're I am not claiming they're putting a hit out on Brian, but it certainly does not help anybody if they think he's some monster and now he's behind prison walls and he goes out into the yard and people are already pissed off because they've only heard X, Y, or Z from a TV, you know? But that's interesting, man. So you don't think he's getting out?
I don't think he is.
Yeah.
No.
What do you guys think, Hive? Type of 1 if you think he's going to get out. Type of 2 if you don't. And it's just a general question. Not saying there's no opportunity or there's no ability. Just what do you think in your gut? 1 if he is, 2 if he won't. And I don't know if you can see the chat, Ron. I'm curious how many people are typing 3. What? I'm sure there'll be a 69 in there somewhere at some point. That's typically a funny joke. I see what? Did I say 3? I didn't say 3. It started to confuse me.
I want to know what 3 is.
Yeah, what is 3? That he's gonna be abstained, or someone said 6, 7. Jesus H. Oh man. Well, Rod, I appreciate your time, dude. Don't go anywhere. I want to get your thoughts on this. So I know you've tuned into the show a handful of times, and one of the things that I do is I talk about I do a tinfoil hat conspiracy of the day, and I try to pick one that a lot of people can relate to. Now, this is that the shuffle button on Spotify or Apple is actually fake, and there's some real data to support this. Okay, so pressing that button doesn't matter just as much as it doesn't matter if you press the like crosswalk sign at the street. Okay. So it's not mathematical randomness. It's just curated with a set of constraints. Okay. So what they do this for, and there's been people that have talked about this. It's not like a giant whistleblowing thing. I just thought it was interesting. Streaming platforms use that shuffle button actually to optimize their engagement, because it's going to keep you on their app longer when you hear a song you might kind of like, and then you're going to press and you're going to skip, and they're going to say, oh, you've used how many skips, either upgrade to premium if you want to, not have commercials, or they're not going to ever play a song they already know that you like. And it's like the entire illusion is more addictive than whatever they're saying like exists is. You know what I'm saying? It works. If that's really what it is, it's like going back to the crosswalk button. I don't know if you've ever heard that one either, where it doesn't matter if you press it, but everybody does.
Yeah. Well, it does here in LA.
Does it actually?
Yeah. Cause otherwise you're not, so I guess maybe in some places it doesn't. There are some places around here where, it absolutely does. But there's somewhere where it doesn't. Here's how, here's where my age shows.
All right.
Here's how I use Spotify. I have gone through over the years and saved all of some of my favorite songs from the 80s up to actually technically from the 60s up to the present. And I have a huge giant playlist, like 1,200 songs right now.
Okay.
And so I usually go from that. I use it because I grew up listening to the radio, and I'm used to the random songs. And so something in me says that's how it should be. So I tend to listen to my playlist on shuffle. And so to that extent, the shuffle does work.
Yes.
If
it's in your own playlist.
I would think, though, I don't doubt, because I know how those media companies work, that there is some algorithm that makes the shuffle not quite random when you're talking about drawing, from a larger group of music.
Right. And just to be clear, I wasn't referring like for your own playlist. Yes, it's absolutely random. You put the songs in there, it'll shuffle it. But I'm saying when you go to like today's country or today's rock or whatever, and you press the shuffle on the radio, they try to continue to get you to listen more. They know a song you kind of like. And I agree. There's an algorithm for that shit.
I cannot imagine that they haven't thought about that, and that there's some algorithm that makes that not truly random.
Yeah. Well, hey, Rod, I appreciate you again. I can't say thank you enough. You did amazing tonight. I really cannot wait to hear what you have to say about what WSU says back. I will be tuning in to the Custody Queens when you guys release your video. I'm excited to get over on to your guys' channel. And if you got any quick closing thoughts, feel free. The stage or the floor is yours. If not, I appreciate everybody.
I just want to repeat that this complaint is fascinating from the perspective of an attorney who has drafted hundreds of complaints in my career. I think it is well pled. That doesn't mean that I think they're going to win. I would be shocked if they get to a jury.
And again, you know your stuff. So I can tell you that for my quick closing thoughts, my biggest takeaway is that you said they did a good job. They did a good job. It was artful. And I got about 20 pages into this before the live today when I got done with work. So now that I'm done with this, I'm about to read this. I'm going to be back on Tomorrow Hive sometime before noon. With that, I hope everybody has a fun, safe, and relaxing Friday evening. I hope everybody sleeps great. Ron, you crush it, and I will be in touch. See you guys tomorrow, Hive. Cheers,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, Ron.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.